Jumping into a full posterior session, the GBRS performance program, we're gonna start with prepping those hips, challenging that ball and socket joint, and then working our way up to that shoulder, protecting and building resilience in that ball and socket joint, and then prepping the nervous system, being explosive out of that hinge overhead, then getting some more strength, loading that posterior chain with an RDL, working up into a supported row, and then going into a dynamic circuit, getting some explosive rows, some kettlebell swings, and then challenging our posture and core with some suitcase carries. Let's jump in this. First movement we have here is a hip airplane. The big thing I'm looking for is polishing this ball and socket joint. So he has his femur that's locked in through that closed chain position. He's rooting that foot into the ground, and he's taking his pelvis and moving it around that fixed femur as much as possible. I think the key point here with hip airplanes is having a base of support. By him using the rack here as a point of support, he really can focus all that attention on opening and prying off this hip and then collapsing in, trying to close that angle, feel that tension, and go through this range of motion. While he's doing this though, he's maintaining that arch of his foot. He's establishing that good connection from his foot up into that hip.
For me, I noticed a huge difference. If I keep that knee in a direct line, I can feel that adductor really turn on.
Yeah.
If I allow my knee to kind of drift over to donate that mobility, it doesn't engage for me. If I force it going straight into this line and then I open up, I can really feel all the tension inside of that.
Well, think about the leverage you're creating. It's a great point. You're establishing that arch, driving that first metatarsal on the ground, good connection, and by maintaining that knee there, when you hold that position, it's like you're almost prying off, so that tissue is getting lengthened right there.
Yep. I mean, you're talking 2 inches, man. If I let that knee drift off and I donate that mobility, it doesn't even engage for me personally. But if I keep that thing exactly where I want it to be, I keep it fixed in space, as soon as I get to this 50% mark, everything turns on, but I can feel it isolate my hips so much more. And now when I roll over, I can feel that piriformis, I can feel everything stretch. It's super nice, man. I mean, I probably add in a hip airplane 3-4 days a week. Even if it's not programmed, I knock them out.
Yeah, if I don't even program it, I'll see you doing this. The key thing here is the base of support though. You're able to find that position and focus on that because you're not worried about balance. If you were worried about balance, you would just be kind of like, that knee would just be all over the place. By having that, you are locked in.
Yeah, man. Great hip opener, man.
So that's opening the hips. Now we're going to move to prepping the shoulder. For this next movement, we got a shoulder arm bar. I want him to throw his leg over so we have some coordinated movements between his lower and upper half, and then he's going to reach up to the ceiling. Let that shoulder blade sit back. Everything's nice and centered on the ground, and then we're gonna roll over, reach, punch towards the ceiling. I'm trying to take this line as vertical as possible, and then reach back down to the ground. Nice and slow, shoulders back, so we have a little bit of T-spine rotation involved here. His eyes are fixated on the point. He's challenging that ball and socket joint of the shoulder, controlling it right back down. No different than we challenge that ball and socket joint of the hip. The shoulder is no different a ball and socket joint, but there's more range of accountability that we have to be aware for. So I like this because he can kind of bias and close that angle a little bit, meanwhile keeping his eye fixated on that point as he challenges that joint. This is something we can provide a progressive stimulus with as well as we try to increase weight as we do this movement even more.
You can really feel that last little bit, like if I normally get set and I think I'm at full arm extension, if I start to roll this pec and my sternum over a little bit more, I can get that extra little bit. That extra little bit is where I feel the weakest on like overhead presses and just shoulder range of motion. I feel like I can do this in such a safe manner and then really just challenge it. I look at that top knuckle, reach a little more, really challenge it, and now it's just safely out. I'm controlling it the entire way. I'm not just letting it collapse and pull me back in position.
That's a beautiful point. It's always about the details. You can do every exercise, as many reps, as much weight as possible, but the details of DJ saying, getting that last 2 inches, moving that scap around the rib cage, that's where we truly get the value of loading our mobility, is the intent behind each movement that we choose. Beautifully said, beautifully done. Prepping the nervous system with the power movement, we're gonna go a single arm dumbbell snatch. Sometimes we'll integrate box jumps, that vertical expression. Since we're going with RDLs for this training block, we're gonna go with a dumbbell expressing that power up overhead, loading into that hinge. So DJ's gonna grab this single arm setup here. This left hand is an active participant. He's loading back into his hips, and then he's straight up overhead. He's being violent, he's being explosive, he's trying to rip this dumbbell up, but while he's up overhead, he's stable, he's active through his core, he's maintaining that good position, warming up that shoulder joint with those shoulder arm bars earlier, really being stable and through that range of motion as we get up overhead. Switching arms, equal reps each side, loading down into the hips, redirecting that force right back up. Beautiful. What are you thinking about when you're taking that force from down to up?
Trying to get my opposite hand to provide that swing. I'm trying to keep it close to my body, not let it drift out too far. I don't want to make it a lateral raise or a front raise. But then when I get up to a point of no return, it's really trying to engage everything, my lats, to keep it stopped. Because if I don't, if I swing this thing out, momentum takes it, it comes too far back, pop my shoulder out of socket, tweak something. So I'm trying to keep that north-south line right to there, nothing past it.
When you're loading down into your hinge, similar to a kettlebell swing, but you have that slight rotation in your hips because you're kind of like single arm rotating back, are you thinking about taking it like in your hip, or do you try to keep it straight in the middle?
I try to keep the dumbbell, but I'll feel my opposite knee kind of give it a little bit of a twist just so I can get more range of motion.
I like that because you're kind of feeding that rotation, so it's almost like loading internal rotation to your hip and then exploding out, which is no different than you like being dynamic around a house.
Yeah, trying to connect all the dots.
Yep.
What's up, guys? DJ Shipley, retired Navy SEAL.
Vernon Griffith, 2024 Tactical Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year.
I've dealt with more injuries and physical limitations than you can possibly imagine.
Our 5-day program will get you out of pain, improve your mobility, strength, and power.
This program is not just for operators, but don't take our word for it.
The GBRS program has been life-changing. It's helped me be consistent, and it's been an asset to my weight loss. I've never been in better shape in my life.
We have thousands of success stories. There's no reason you can't be the next.
Start today with a free 7-day trial.
Prep the nervous system through that hinge pattern. Now we're going to go with more of a strength input with an RDL. This is the block we're in, not really pulling from the floor, but keeping that tension on the hamstrings the whole time. I mean, you've been telling me ever since we've been getting back into heavy RDLs about how much sore your hamstrings are.
Dude, we knock them out on Monday, and by the time we get to Thursday for like a full leg day, I'm like, brother, I am still sore, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, but once you build them up a couple, 3 weeks of tolerance or whatever it is, really become accustomed to them. We'll take a couple weeks off. And as soon as we go back, I feel like I can isolate and focus so much more on the hamstring.
Yes.
You build that connection with them. Dude, I'm a sucker for an RDL now that I actually know how to do them, not just relying on my entire lower back. I feel like I can put all the emphasis on my hamstrings, but it took me, I feel like a very long time to be able to do that with the right coaching stuff. But yeah, I mean,
all right, let's set up. DJ, big emphasis what he was talking about, keeping that tension. So he's about a little bit narrower than shoulder width, whatever feels natural for your English that you want. Both an overhand grip, that pronated hand grip, grab down to the bar. Safely pick the bar up from the ground, active core, nice and tight. Boom. So from this top end setup here, DJ's thinking about this pure hinge. He's sliding back in the hips, breaking at the hips, sliding straight down, abs are tight, about mid-shin, right back up. The second you feel that tension in your hamstrings, mid-shin, right back up. Some people will try to go a little bit deeper. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but we don't want to involve the lower back. We want to make sure we are just loading those hamstrings, those glutes as we slide back into that hinge and then pull back through. Think about your feet here. His toes are actively down onto the ground. He's maintaining that arch, driving his hips through. Hinging back, sliding away, meet the bar. Boom. Let's get one more. Hips, safely return the bar to the ground. Big thing DJ did there, and something that drives me nuts, safe in, safe out. You did all those reps good, safely return the bar down to the ground with good form. Don't just drop. It drives me absolutely nuts when I see people do that.
Yeah, usually the times I get hurt in the past, first rep and last rep.
Yep.
Not respecting the weight, just ripping off the ground. It's like, oh my God, what have I done?
Exactly.
Same one. I get all the way up to the top, I'm like, oh, I let the entire weight just collapse in my posture.
When you're thinking about cueing your torso, so I think it's easier with deadlifts because you're kind of like getting in, DJ, and you're locking everything down and you have that floor as a cue to reset. What are you doing? Are you cueing it the same with like your upper body when you're holding that?
I'm trying to engage my lats, create that stability.
Like you stood that break in the bar concept?
Yep. Trying to take the outside edges of my hands and rotate them in. Yeah, break the bar a little bit, nice and tension. I take that all the way into my lats. Everything's locked in now. Now I know my upper body's uninvolved at this point. Now it's just a pillar. And now when I hinge down, I think about my hamstrings and trying to push them out without keep my knees completely straight. So a little bit of flex. As I'm lowering it down, just thinking tension, 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 tension. As soon as I go to redirect, I switch all my focus from my hamstrings back to my glutes. Squeeze.
Nice.
That way I don't donate mobility.
Yep.
That's my stop point. And then I kind of just feather out the glutes. When I get to about this point, I'm thinking just hamstrings back. Hamstrings back, hamstrings back.
Yep.
Up safely.
Hell yeah. Your foot contact. Do you feel weight shifting your foot, or are you able to maintain the same weight in distribution of your foot throughout that entire rep?
Depending on the load and how fatigued I am, The only time I really feel myself get away, if we're doing a super heavy load, my grip starts to fail. I'm just searching for some kind of stability. I'll feel my toes start to pry up a little bit. I'm trying to keep them down while I actually engage my hamstrings.
Yeah.
If I can't build that for whatever reason, if I do elevate my toes some, I feel like my hamstrings turn on, but I'm trying to be able to maintain my whole foot on the ground.
Yeah.
So I got to tell myself, just big toe down, big toe down.
It's kind of like an opposite thought process. You're going back, but then it's like stay forward.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to find the middle ground between the two.
And then my head position, where I'm actually looking, really matters for me.
Where are you on an RDL?
Probably 4 to 6 feet out in front of me, maybe 8 feet would be the farthest.
Different from a regular deadlift, or?
Pretty much the same, but if my focus gets away from my hamstrings, I bring my point of focus in further to keep my head positioned down more. If I start to get out here, a lot of times I'll start to arch my back.
Yep.
Stuff like that.
So you're chin down.
Yep.
Yep.
Chin down, and then as I come up, the same thing. I know I've still got a little bit of a forward head posture, but it really keeps me engaged in my hamstrings.
I do the same thing.
And not end up in this configuration. I feel like a lot of dudes, they start to do this. They get that huge arch in their back. I'll drop it down. Now I feel like I'm just more connected and safer in.
Perfect. Next, we're going with the supported row setup. A little bit complex. You got a bar setup through the seat portion of this. If you want a little bit more of an emphasis on this setup and how you set it up correctly, search back into my YouTube feed and you'll see a demonstration video of how we set this up for the GBRS performance program. DJ, why don't you just mount this thing? I like this because it gets us a full body setup, getting some full body tension all the way down to the legs, to the hamstrings, the glutes, but this is just a supported row. If you'd rather use a supported row machine, you can definitely go with that, but I'm just cueing into the bench as hard as possible. Anytime we're touching a bench, I want you to become the bench. So all that rigidity driving up into the bar, glutes engaged, and from here, he's just gonna drive into the bar, get some tension in the bar, and drive up. Because our bench is a little bit more on the shallow side, a little bit more not too deep, we can get that bar up a little bit higher. If you have a lot of density on the bench, a little bit more padding on the backside, you may not be able to get to that position, so you may want to go with dumbbells or even just an incline bench to begin with. This is just a setup we like to use because we get involvement by driving back up into the bar with the ankles, getting his hamstrings involved, glutes, everything all the way up into that back with the row.
It's very hard to cheat this row.
Absolutely is. And I like holding that slight pause at the top.
Yep.
It's almost like a posterior bridge almost, because you're driving up into the bar here.
Yeah, it's a really good setup. Trying to hold it at the top and then at the bottom, if you have the ability. I've got long arms, but if I can just get an extra inch, I can really get those scaps to kind of splay out and open up a little bit. So full pull, make contact. I get to here, and sometimes I can just kind of roll my shoulders forward, and they're hovering 1/16 of an inch off the ground.
Yeah.
Try to open up scaps as much as I can.
Finishing off this session with this pull circuit, we're gonna go with this dynamic sled row. We have a band attached, enough weight on the sled to kind of give us enough resistance and pull, and he's just doing these reps over and over again. He's feeling the weight as he drifts out and then dynamically pulling back in. I found this is one of the best ways that we can produce horizontal power from a pulling position that's safe, effective. He gets the aspects of a big concentric pull and then also that eccentric pull as he eases back out. He's gonna get 2 more reps. Beautiful. And then we're gonna go right into a kettlebell swing. With this kettlebell swing, we have that opposite approach. We had it pulling back on us. Now we're getting it away from us. He's loading back into the hips, into that hinge, and then expressing that power up. He's got good active participant with his feet, keeping his feet down into the ground, cueing into it, loading back into the hips, expressing that hip extension, driving up and out on the way through. Get 2 more reps. Beautiful. Sit it down. Now we're gonna go straight into the carries. Holding this suitcase set up here, he's just walking across the floor, staying stacked across the ground, not letting his hips drift side to side, good foot placement of his foot. He's not walking on a balance beam. He's got equal weight distributed on each foot. Switch hands, good posture, controlling our breath, working across the floor. Minimal rest between these as we try to maintain this arousal, this stress that's building throughout all these movements, involving our posture here from those fatiguing movements beforehand. Sit down. How you feel?
Good.
Are you able when you're expressing all that power max and now this fatigue position, I really like being able to express all that power with control and now hold your posture, control your breath.
Gotta be able to control the breath. For me, it's a little bit of a challenge right now with the stomach situation going on, but as long as I keep it fluid, just keep it moving. Not bracing, not really trying to compress it down, but just in and out. Nice, easy pace. Good though.
That's a full posterior session in the GBRS performance program. If you have any interest, we have a 7-day free trial. Definitely come check it out. The message board, the community is the best part of the whole program, the encouragement that goes there.
You won't regret it, man. See you guys in the gym.